ESC 15.3 volts, 0 amps, 66 Fahrenheit. AS3X mode, manual mode, motor off, motor on, mid rates, high rates, takeoff flaps, flaps up.
Hello RC fans, and welcome back to my basement RC workshop. You might notice today that I'm wearing this little lavalier mic. It's a wireless mic that's hooked up to my iPhone. One of my followers commented that the sound quality on my videos was variable because sometimes the camera was sitting on a tripod and sometimes I was holding it in my hands, or I was very up close to the microphone, so the sound level was going up and down. I'm trying this out to see if it levels it out. I've already tried it, in fact, and I think it's going to work really well, but I'll let you be the judge. Today the subject is sounds. In the RC world, we can also use sounds to enhance our experience. For example, for years, RC pilots flying electric airplanes relied on timers for their batteries, typically 5 to 7 minutes, and it was time to land. With this modern equipment, we can more precisely tell the state of the battery because we can get ESC voltage, which is essentially battery voltage. And with that ESC voltage, we know, based on the milliamp hours remaining, how much of that battery we've used. And actually we measure voltage. And we know what the critical voltages are for various pack sizes, pack voltage. So we can more accurately know when it's time to land. If we're flying full throttle on this Turbo Timber Evolution here, I know I need to be down in about 5 minutes. But if I'm just moseying around flying at half throttle, I can stretch that to 7, 8, 9 minutes. It's even more important with sailplanes like this little Crescendo here. If I am doing a lot of soaring, catching some thermals, I may be using the throttle intermittently, and instead of 5 minutes on the engine power, I can probably go to close to 10 minutes running the engine at low power, and I've gotten up to a 1-hour flight out of that Crescendo. Of course, most of that was riding thermals. But it's really important to know what that battery voltage is, because batteries can start to go bad. You may suddenly find that a battery is only giving you 3 minutes, and if you don't know that, that battery is running down faster than normal, you may find yourself landing in a tree or out in the field somewhere, which has happened to me with my maul. So there are principally two kinds of sounds that we're going to be concerned with here. One is telemetry, which is coming from the airplane to the transmitter. So really the transmitter is a transceiver, and so is the receiver in the airplane. But for purposes of today, we'll talk about just the transmitter and receiver, the transmitter being this unit and the receiver being the AR637TA in this airplane and in the Crescendo. They both have the same spectrum receiver. In order for telemetry to work, you have to have telemetry capable equipment, which all of this spectrum stuff in these two airplanes have. You have to have a Smart ESC, or an ESC that's capable of detecting battery voltage. Smart battery helps too, which I have, the 1800 4C here. And you have to have a transmitter that is capable of receiving and displaying that battery voltage, along with other telemetry settings as well. So it's not, any one of those things is missing, you're not going to get telemetry from whatever that thing is missing is. I got telemetry in here from a GPS, telemetry in the crescendo from a GPS, and also in the crescendo a spectrum variometer altimeter sensor, which is very useful for sailplanes. It's a tiny little module, works like a charm. It's actually mounted in the top of the fuselage, just below the wing, and works like a charm. Love that thing. And we'll talk about some of the settings that we can use for that altimeter. And then the other category is what we can do with just the transmitter. Things like setting switches for rates and flight modes, gear up, gear down, lights on, lights off, getting audio clues that tell us we have in fact flipped the correct switch. It may sound like it gets pretty busy, and we can make it as busy as we want or as unbusy as we want. But the fact is, it is somewhat useful, especially if you're a beginner, to set this stuff up and know that, and by the way, set it up the same on all your aircraft so you're not fumbling around with the gear switch thinking you're changing rates or something. But it is not that difficult, and once you set up a model, it actually goes pretty quickly. The hardest thing about the sounds is finding them on the list and then assigning them to the correct switch position. The telemetry is just dead simple. Okay, we're going to start, though, with volume. The home screen on this NX8, and I think on the DX series as well, has a way to set the volume using the roller bar. But we're going to use something different. I'm going to set up the volume using this rotating knob on top. And I find that's extremely useful. Some people use that for setting AS3X, but you can also set it using these trim switches over here if you want to. So let's start off with, how do you set the volume to this rotating switch up on top? And to do that, I'm going to have to move and set up the camera to show specifically the switch settings that you have to make for that. Okay, volume control. This takes you through a couple of different levels in the menus. We're starting with the home page. We're on the Turbo Timber Evo. Here we go. We're going to need to go down to System Setup off the main menu, and yes. Then we're going to go down to System Settings. I go to Next, and then down past the box styles to Volume Controls. And then we're going to leave these all set at 50. These are relative to each other, and they're all set at the same level. We can quieten one down if we want to. And we'll go down to Analog, and this is how you set it. You set it to rotating knob, or R knob, which is the knob on the top next to the antenna, just to the right of the antenna. Okay, if we back up here, I think the only two settings here are R knob and inhibit. Okay, that's right. Set that to R knob, and now our knob is our volume control. Let's go back home. There we go. Okay, we got that set. Now I'm going to set up battery or ESC, whichever one you want to call it, voltage, amps, and temperature telemetry. To do that, we're going to go here. Guess what? We're going to go to telemetry. Oops. I'm having a little problem with this scrolling lately. Okay, so here we have all of our telemetry settings.
Distance, no data, ESC 15.4
And you can
0 amps, 66 Fahrenheit.
You can hear that I've already got it set up. ESC. Have to click twice. Cells 4. This is a 4-cell battery. 4S battery. The low voltage alarm is at 3.2 volts. And that's a vibe, and you get a boop, boop, boop. Amps I have inhibited. Temperature is also inhibited. I haven't had that problem. I do monitor the temperature through the telemetry though. 6 poles, ratio 1:1, those are standard. And I have it set for every 60 seconds.
No data, ESC 15.4 volts, 0 amps, 68 Fahrenheit.
So 15.4 volts is, it's charged up. I could fly it on that, but I need to be over 16 to get started. I've got warning reports inhibited because I'm going to be listening to it. So let's go back to the home page.
No data, ESC, no data.
Distance we'll get to in a minute. That's the GPS. So let's go take a look at, oops, I need to go the other way. There's my ESC status. And we can see that at 15.4 volts, the battery's pretty much ready for a charge. And I don't know why, but sometimes that just disappears. There it comes back. And that's the status. We can see the temperature minimum max. We can see volts and motor amps, minimum max. The minimum's always going to be 0. This is very useful information. When you get down close to 15 volts,
0 amps, 68 Fahrenheit.
it's definitely time to think about getting the airplane on the ground. So let's go back to the home page. Let's see, there we go, back to home. Okay, from home, I'm going to go back down to telemetry, and I am going to turn the Smart ESC status reports off for the rest of this video, and then turn them back on. There we go. No more status reports from the ESC to get in our way. Back. Okay, next up, GPS. Okay, let's talk about the GPS and the altimeter module that are in the Crescendo. I've actually had to take the airplane outside to get the GPS to acquire. Would not acquire a signal way down here in the basement, but that's okay. So to set these up, you're going to go to telemetry. And go to, notice that these are in a different order from the turbo timber, but that's okay. Okay, we're going to set up altitude. And I've got the status reports set up for 60 seconds. I've got minimum altitude 0 feet inhibited, and if I get to 600 feet, it starts to vibrate. Not 400, 600. We have a little higher ceiling at the airport that I fly out of most of the time. And 60 seconds for status reports, no warning. If I set warning, get over 600 feet, it will tell me. It starts to buzz the transmitter. Okay, so that's that one. Now let's go to GPS. The display is turned on. We're 4 hours from GMT. Don't know why 1968 is showing. Altitude is set to AGL, but it doesn't matter because when you have both the altimeter and the GPS in here, the altimeter is what reports the altitude, not the GPS. And status reports every 60 seconds, warnings inhibited. So let's go take a look at what information you get off of that GPS module. If we can, there it is, GPS. Okay, it's sitting outside right now, so speed 0. The altitude is 800 feet on the GPS. It's actually closer to 900 here at the house. Distance is 16 feet away. I have 12 satellites. It's 16 feet because it's sitting just outside where I'm recording. And latitude 39.94558 and longitude 86.231960. And I've got 14 satellites. That's a pretty accurate reading on that long. If you know anything about GPS, the altitude isn't all that precise unless you've got something called WAS, Wide Area Augmentation System, that these GPSs do not have. But to get GPS certified for IFR flight, you have to have that augmentation system, and that's the main thing it's augmenting is the altitude. Geometrically, has the most error in GPS. Now, why is this useful? Because I can put latitude and longitude in Google Maps on my cell phone, and it will show me the last position of that GPS unit, which hopefully is still in the airplane. It even keeps that until you turn the transmitter off. So if you lose the model, you don't want to turn the transmitter off. You want to get these coordinates, put it in your mapping system on your phone, and go try to find it. The limitation here is that it's the last position that the GPS sent and was received by the transmitter. So if it crashes and the battery pops out, but it was still sending signals that the transmitter could receive, you're going to have probably within 10 feet of where that airplane is located. But if you fly out of range of the radios, it's going to be the last position received, and that may not be close to where the airplane actually came down. Within a reasonable range of a mile or two in flat terrain, this is going to work pretty well. Past that, I'm not sure, but it's better than nothing. Okay, so let's go take a look back here at, I need to do this. Oh, the variometer, yeah. Airplane is sitting outside on a level surface, so the variometer is not reporting anything different from in way of altitude. It's not climbing, it's not descending. Okay, and I have the variometer set up on a 15-second time span on this graph. The altitude here is relative to where the battery powered up the unit. It's AGL, above ground level. It says 16 feet because it is, I'm in the basement and it's upstairs. And that's pretty darned accurate. It's usually within 5 or 10 feet of where you took off from. And it is the takeoff point. It's not actually above ground level, it's above the takeoff point, to be perfectly precise about it. But I live in Indiana and we don't have a lot of hills around this part of the state anyway. Down south, it's a little different. So that's how those work. Now let's hear what this is telling us. Turn the volume up.
Volume 95.
Okay, something just disturbed the variometer. You could hear the high tone. Maybe a gust of wind outside. It's actually sitting in an enclosed porch. And you'll hear some reports here in a minute from the GPS. And I think you will. Let's see. Let's go make sure those are turned on.
Altitude 17 feet.
There we go.
Distance 22 feet.
Okay, they are. The distance is the distance from where the airplane was powered up. And the altitude is that altitude module that's in the airplane reporting the altitude relative to where it was started up. The tone you heard, that high-pitched tone, indicates a climb, and the faster you're climbing, the higher that pitch goes. A bass tone, much lower tone, for when you're descending, and there's a silent band in there between. Let's go to the variometer. Okay, something else just caused it to show a climb. Here's the variometer
Altitude
settings.
17 feet. Distance 26.
Turn that volume back down. The gap width, that's the width of the graph width, yeah. Lift report starts at plus 2.6 feet per second. Sync report at minus 3.2. In between those two values, it doesn't make any noise. I've also got the variometer set to switch H, which I just switched. That's on and that's off. Up is on, down is off. The sound that that makes is this.
Volume 85. Rate mode. Off. Rate mode. Off.
That's important for gliders because we don't always fly gliders flat, fly them in looking for lift, is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes we want to do aerobatics with them, and rapid changes in altitude. You don't want that thing making a lot of noise, but you do want to continue to monitor your battery. So with this switch, you can turn that variometer off and still get your telemetry off of your ESC and monitor your battery state. And especially if you're doing some high energy aerobatics, you're going to be draining that battery a lot faster than if you're just flying around looking for lift, not using much power. Okay, that's it for those two modules and what you can get out of them. One thing I did forget to mention in connection with this is that if you have an AR637T in an airplane, you do not need that altimeter variometer monitor. It has it built in, and you get these same screens, but you don't need that extra telemetry module. Another interesting telemetry item that you can get has to do with, oops, yeah, no, it's not charged, has to do with the flight log. So if we go to telemetry again, go down to item 11 on this list and go to flight log. we can get an alarm for holes. A hold is a situation where the airplane has temporarily lost contact with the transmitter. Frame losses you're going to get those on almost any flight. So let's set holes. Let's allow 2 holes, and we'll get a voice alert when we get 2 holes. Theoretically, you should probably set it at 1, but you may get 1, but if you get another one, you better be bringing that airplane back towards you as soon as you get control and landing it. Very useful thing. Let's look at some other telemetry items here. G-force. We can set alarms for minimum and maximum G's. I don't do that. Variometer, we talked about. The gyroscope, you can just turn it on and off on the display off the home page. Altitude, we talked about. GPS. Smart battery. This is potential for alarms for startup volts set to a minimum of 4 volts per cell, which on a 4-cell battery is 16. And this battery is obviously not charged because we keep getting alarms. And an overcharge maximum of 4.3, but I've never had a battery overcharge. An imbalance, I've never had a battery get unbalanced, anything like 200 microvolts. Back. We've also got receiver voltage. Never had a problem with that. All these airplanes have BECs, and they're really not an issue. Okay, that's it for telemetry. Next, we're going to move on to switch changes. On the switches, I've set up sounds for quite a few switches, some of which may be interesting to you, some of which are not, one of which is peculiar to this airplane. This is the turbo timber, as it's got most of the options available except for landing gear. And it's got one kind of special option. So I'm going to start over here on the A switch and work around from left to right. A switch.
Lights on. Lights off. Bombs away.
I've got the A switch hooked up to 2 things. One is the lights and the other is a servo on the belly that releases a, quote, bomb, unquote. B switch.
AS3X mode. Safe mode. Manual mode.
Flight modes, 3 of them. C switch.
Motor off. Motor on. Motor off.
Moving from 2 to 1 to 0 back to 2. The D switch is broken on this airplane. I've got to get it replaced over the winter. E switch.
Mid rates. High rates. Low rates.
The F switch is not connected to anything. G switch.
Take off flaps. Flaps up. Landing flaps.
Rotating knob.
Volume 95. Volume 65. Volume 90.
And see, F, G, H switch does nothing. I switch is the bind button.
Braking.
That's thrust reverse. And that's normal forward. So those are the switches. To see those, all you have to do is go to Audio Events, Switch Changes. And here they are, not in alphabetical order. So to set these, you're going to go to a switch. So let's go first to the C switch, because that's the one I always set up first. Is throttle cut, but I call it motor on and motor off, because after all, we're turning the motor on and off, which to me makes more sense than throttle cut on and throttle cut off. So it's set so that motor on is in the 0 position. That's the forward position. Push it forward to go. Motor off is 1 and 2. It's a 3-position switch. And then G is flaps. E is rates. I'm sorry. E is rates. B is flight modes, safe, AX, AS3X, and manual or gyros off. A is lights on and off. I is braking, and silence with its normal out position, and A is also bombs away. You can put 2 sounds on a switch, 3 if you want to. So to put in one of these, all you do is add a sound event. Go to the switch you want to add it to. It's on inhibit right now. I'm not going to do it. Pick that switch and then take a look at it. Make sure that you've got the 1, 2, and if available, or 0, 1, 2, and if, sometimes they only have 0 and 1 if it's a 2-position switch. And go look up through the list of, for C, switch position 0 is motor on, and you would look through this long list and find motor on, which is going to be back up here and press it for position 0. It's easy to get these reversed, but easy to fix it if you do it. So those are the switches I've set up. Flight modes are a bit peculiar. You can set flight mode sounds in the flight mode function. Let's go over here, go to system setup. Yes, turns the power off. Go to spoken flight mode, which I have set to silence. It's because I have set it up with a switch. You can go to flight mode setup, switch B, 3 modes, go to next, and here you can set custom sounds. Let's see here, okay. You can set these sounds to be what you want. The defaults are flight mode 1, 2, and 3. You can override those with the spoken flight mode turned to inhibit, which inhibits these, and then you can go to switch changes and change them there. So you got 2 places here where you can possibly change what happens with sound on flight modes. Now let's go back to audio events, because there's a lot more to this. I don't use stepping reports, generic reports. Here's another place where you can set reports at power up. You can set these so that these will report what they're set when you power up the system. Okay, there we go, back. Center tone. I've got these set to silent. I think the throttle is going to beep once when I advance it. Yep. And then from then on, when I advance the throttle, you're not hearing that center beep anymore. And you don't hear anything on any of the other joystick controls. Flight modes, you can set those here. Spoken flight mode here. Turn that on or off. That's all, though. Turn it on or off.
Motor off, motor on, motor off. AS3X mode.
Oh, here we go. No, you can turn it.
AS3X mode.
You have to set each one of them. I'm sorry.
AS3X mode.
You have to set each. You have to set each.
AS3X mode.
You have to set each one of these to silent in this Okay, telemetry warnings. You can set those telemetry warnings over here that we talked about earlier. And don't do trainer on this airplane. Model start. Oops, wait a minute. Yeah, you can set these one time, throttle over 30%. And you can set these in the channel as well if you want to. System sounds. In activity, I'd left these at the default. If the system is idle for more than, I think, 15-20 minutes or so, it starts doing a voice, which is, I forget exactly what the language is, and it starts to vibrate. And low voltage voice vibe for flight pack milliamperes, or voltage rather. They call it milliamperes, but it's really voltage. And you can turn those on or off. And there's the warning. Oh, look. I got a warning on a hold for some reason. That's weird. Okay. Now we got to go back here to audio events. It was good to see that work. It was kind of unexpected. Power sounds. This is not engine power or motor power. It's the transmitter start and stop. So when you start the transmitter up, you get bells arise, and I'll shut it down here and we'll hear bells depart. Volume 50. And binding. When you do bind, you're going to get a voice, whether you're doing this with the bind button or through forward programming. You get cues that you're making progress. So let's shut the system down. Let's unplug the battery from the airplane. Get that nice warning if it's still plugged in, shut down. And there's the power down sound. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you may have learned a few new tricks. If you have things you do with sounds, share them. And we can all obviously learn. I don't pretend to know it all. I've just been doing this for 3 years. But there is just amazing what possibilities are with this new equipment. And I'm sure if you have different brands of stuff, you can probably do even more than you can with Spectrum. But here we go into winter. Looking like the weather Saturday here is going to be pretty good, high of 60. But it's going to be a bit breezy, and I'll probably get out to one of my 2 clubs and fly and get to play around some with this stuff. I got a few minor mods I've made to some airplanes that I want to test out and just generally have some fun with the guys and gals. So take care, have a great winter, and I hope to get another video up here if I can think of anything else to film. I don't do much outside because I don't have a camera crew like Brian Phillips or the sailors do, and some other folks. Don't have the equipment and don't have the skills that those people have developed through years and years of filming airplanes in flight. I've tried it. It just doesn't seem to work very well unless it's one of my big models and I keep it real close. So I've pretty much kind of given up on that for now until I can come up with a better solution. Thanks a lot for watching. If you like, subscribe, or at least give me a thumbs up. Take care. Bye-bye.